Showing channel here over at SubScribe So the Trump effect and the woke backlash is actually a lot stronger than I suspected it would be. I didn't think Trump would come out of the gates this hard. Is like going to continue? I don't know, but I didn't expect this. So EA faces a little bit of a stock market meltdown as stock plunges 20% after admission of Dragon Age: The VeilGuard failure. The woke abomination that I thought would do a whole lot better because I assumed the name recognition would go farther, and I didn't think people were this done with woke, but it does seem like there's some sort of Trump effect going on where people are done with woke, but is the mainstream, the producers of this stuff, are they going to accept it and turn around? And a few weeks ago, I was thinking, well, all these video game companies and the movies, I assumed that they would prefer to go bankrupt rather than dial down the woke. But I'm kind of less confident with that statement now because woke has been hitting so many brick walls, and it's not gone. That is a long way, if ever, away. And for the government sector, they're just rebranding some of the DEI titles, but then some people are actually getting fired, and some sections are being shut down, and that has an effect everywhere. It's not just the government; it's the whole vibe has shifted a little bit, and it's not obviously as far as I would love it to go, but it is something. And in private industry, this stuff is just not selling. It's been not selling for 10 years. That's obvious. And if they were doing something like this 20 years ago, before social media had saturation it does, they would be able to get away with it much more. But they're accelerating into left-wing themes and tropes at exactly the wrong time because there's this massive parallel network of people online talking about this kind of stuff. And that has a huge effect on market forces. The Comicsgate Phantom Menace crowd talking about movies is dealing with hundreds of millions of dollars. Anyway, so this stuff is all connected. People have less tolerance for woke now. Where if I think something that came out that was accepted a few years ago, if it came out now, I think it would probably get rejected. So this game is the one with the famous scene that only lasted a few minutes, but it seemed to have been enough to kill the game. It was a bit where they're having, that's what I mean, is like people's tolerance is, there's like a binary switch where if you switch it, it shuts down to go, if I see this scene, I'm not going to support it in any way. And it's like people are on a very, very sensitive now, and for good reason too. I mean, we've seen this stuff in everything: games, books, modern books anyway, especially movies, TV, streaming shows, especially commercials. So it had that scene where it was a bit where they're having and like, how many times are we going to see the short hair with the shaved side of the head? They're having a conflict over pronouns, and the game takes like 5 minutes to give the audience a lecture that if you have to call men women if they tell you to, or use the gendered form of their choice instead of like the biologically and grammatically correct form. And if you correctly gender them, you're expected to do push-ups. I think I talked about it in a few video games. The whole scene was just cringe to a level that would have made the peak SJWs of 2014. Was that kind of when it really got at the top, feel embarrassed? And that's another good question, is where's that 2014, what is Gamergate? Was that 2013? Where's that kind of SJW energy? And you still see the morbidly obese with the blue hair, but not as much. The energy in slut walks and all that kind of stuff, that seems to have just kind of disappeared. And maybe we'll see a return when the next George Floyd comes around. And that's obviously, it's only a matter of time. There's been a couple of close calls, but then it's always something like the guy was armed and I'm doing something that kind of took the steam out of people. It's like the conditions have to be just right. So the other issue with these bombing video games is, and the left-wing kids are defending them on Twitter, but it even seems like they're running out of steam when they defend movies and games. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to the next kind of Hollywood getting into gear for its next phase. to see the left wing come out there and talk about how great these movies are, and then they just don't go out to the theaters, or maybe I don't know. I mean, Disney's kind of the one I have my eyes on. Maybe they'll turn things around, but I doubt it. Is that these left wing soy boy bleeding pussies are not buying the stuff that they always say they want. Not even to own the Chad Nazis. They love to fight the culture war online where it's free to do so, but they're not actually. Now they've gone over to Blue Sky, which is talk about it's like an Epstein kind of echo chamber with this kind of crowd where, like, there's a segment of the left that is deeply disturbing, deeply into that kind of. There's like a shadow section of the BLT group that is into some dark stuff. It's not weird. Weird is pulling punches too strongly. It's evil stuff, and that's to their credit. It's why the the LGB, and then they're cutting out the QT or something, having a little kind of a gay civil war, I suppose. So the thing is, they don't buy these games. Like, they never actually get together to go, you know what, we should go support these movies to own these the Hugo Boss right wingers online. But they'll do things on social media where they say we have to get out here and support some TV show like She-Hulk or something, so we can get a second season, or get out there and watch a movie so people know that women can be directors. Except they can't, and the evidence is that if they could, if Elizabeth Banks and such were good at those kind of things, you wouldn't have to have like a commercial. You wouldn't have to advertise that you need to go support a movie like it's a charity. That's friggin' bizarre. I can't imagine that happening for anything else other than woke stuff. It's like if it was good, people would naturally go to it. Anyway, they do that all the time, but then they themselves don't actually go out and support this kind of stuff. The other thing SJWs always say is that the game didn't fail because it was woke. It was another reason, or the game or the movies or whatnot. And people are getting in the comments, are going, no, it was the woke scene in the movies. And this one scene was like, this was anachronistic because it belonged more to like 2015 type of energy. This kind of like giving somebody a lecture on pronouns, because the whole trans pronoun thing is definitely on the downward slope, and instead for a game to spend millions of dollars to try to have a scene like that is absolutely insane. But the correlation between failure of woke games and movies is pretty tight, and it's coupled with the left wing who are not supporting the stuff that they say they want. They want this woke stuff to exist and for someone to buy it or to subsidize it, but not them. And the thing is, I don't even know if they're selling the high seas for this kind of stuff. So they're definitely not putting their money where their mouth is. So something isn't adding up, because it seems like the woke crowds are lying when they say that they want these politically correct storylines about what was it? Was it the Concord game? Whereas it was like obese POCs and a cop gets deleted in the first like minute of the thing. It's cold, callous. There's a lot of sociopaths among the left wing. The other thing that is gonna was that Dustborn? I think it was Dustborn, where they had a song about kids, like newborns, and then they rhymed it with new prawn. And adults don't combine children, the concept of children, those under the age of the majority, with things that are of prurient interest, because it's gross. That's like Epstein stuff. Why would you rhyme newborn with new porn? That's insane. And none of their editors took them aside and say, yeah, you can't do this. You can't sexualize kids. You can't even have the appearance of impropriety with children. Like, people, that just gives people, I was going to say the ick, but it's more like a murderous rage for people who, want to hurt kids. And they didn't see that. And nobody working on the team said, just don't do that. A prawn is on the way out as well, because people are realizing how biblically fucking evil it is. And where's it going with this? The other thing that is going to happen with the combination of Trump and Elon's Twitter is a bit of a return to political incorrectness. I hope this comes back like it did in the early 90s. There was a huge return to it. But this is limited by the platforms that allow it, and that's the other interesting point, that even Meta, Instagram, and Facebook have said that they're going to allow a little bit more free speech. And there's some conspiracy type said it was to distract from Israel or something like that. And I guess TikTok is involved in that as well. But I don't really understand that why that would be a critical issue for Meta, because no amount of protests by blue-haired people is going to change anything, and not just with Israel, but with any conflict. Like what the puppet masters want to do, I mean, you would have to have, like, no amount of normal protest is gonna change anything, whether you're on the right or the left. You would have to have a make sure the Daily Stormer tab didn't open up. You would have to have a something much more serious than that. I mean, protests come and go. Like you see how even when they don't know what they're protesting about, it's not going to affect like America giving money to Israel or Ukraine or whatever. It's like you could. There's nothing that these blue-haired weirdos could do. No amount of, like, even that's why the TikTok thing was kind of stupid, because yeah, obviously that's why they took it down, but they're not changing anyone's minds that matter is the thing. Like, you'd have to go much further than TikTok. The left wing seems to have also kind of lost their energy to protest, and everything's kind of weird, but I think the explanation is, as much as people hate Trump and the right wing in general, things just are not great, and inflation is getting worse, and we just had 4 years under Biden, which was such a disaster that even left wing people were looking for a change, and they were not looking for Kamala. They weren't looking for Trump, but they look at the comparison between Kamala and Biden and Trump, and a lot of them probably thought it's the time to just not vote for this election. Anyway, it feels like the next obviously woke game or movie is going to get destroyed on social media as soon as it's advertised. That's why I'm kind of looking forward to the next big thing that comes out. And it seems like Hollywood has it slowed down a little bit. I know the Disney thing is coming up, the Star Wars thing is coming up, but I mean, it's definitely slowed down. I mean, they've had so many bombs lately, and you look at it and you're like, just don't make woke movies. How hard is that? It's like it's almost asking the impossible. Eventually, they're going to run out of money, and they're going to just pull something out of the 80s and 90s. So people love crapping on woke, and then you combine that with the left-wing lack of financial support, and it's getting to the point where if a movie comes out with a female lead in an action role, investors are going to wonder why you're throwing away money. There's been too many examples over the past 10 years of that specific thing, of female in action role. You have a very uphill, you're ice skating uphill, because, I mean, I think Marvel and DC have both had examples of that losing money. So what it feels like is that there's a Trump effect that is 10 times stronger than the than the first. I was talking to another big YouTuber, and we were talking about stuff, and they go, "Yeah, maybe you can get your tech in order," or something like that. It's just friggin' brutal. It feels like this Trump effect is much stronger than the first time, mostly because Biden was so bad, and there are obviously wars everywhere, and there's potential for another big one over in Russia, unless somebody gets a handle on that. And then there's massive crime throughout the West with the recent changes, and the cost of living has made dreaming of the future pretty much impossible. Where, I mean, people are they're not even like staying ahead, they're slowly just kind of sinking. And quick, give more money to Ukraine and Israel. Where if the left wing is rioting for left wing policies now, that they're not the ones who are paying any bills, because the people who do pay the bills are just telling these people to kindly shut the fuck up. Someone pointed out something about woke games, and the obvious first one is the games themselves have left-wing virtue signaling in them, themes. But then the people they hire to make the games are, of course, SJWs. But the other aspect is they're not as technically skilled as they should be. I mean, of course, they're not. If they're not white males, they're not going to be the best of the best, because diversity hiring applies to video games as well as movies, as well as everything else, and it just is not very good. Because once you get away from merit and the concept of social cohesion at any scale, you're just not getting what you could get. So you have more expensive problems with the games and character development issues and narrative inconsistencies because left-wing characters are not organic, and the narrative has to be squeezed into what is politically correct for that year, which might become problematic next year. These people never know. So people are just going places in the games, and they're doing things because it's not organic. They start with a bunch of woke lesson points about pronouns or POCs or capitalism, whatever, and they just arrange the story to fit the talking points so they can grind their axe. And I think people now are on such a hair trigger that any indication of woke is going to mean the product is going to lose a big percentage from the profits it would have made if they just had normal people making the games. People are going to nuke it from orbit as soon as it comes out, which is obviously what these companies deserve. I hope they all go out of business. Because if enough of these games in Hollywood, these big pop culture companies decide to Sudoku themselves, then there are going to be room for alternatives to be created, which is where you really get creativity. Because, like I said, that's the thing with Comicsgate is just such a fantastic example of something mainstream comics being so bad that somebody goes, I can make a YouTube channel, crap all over them for a couple of years, get a following, and then sell my own comics, which have turned out to be excellent. Mr. Myers and Ibe Canales and John, what's that guy's name? The werewolf guy, John something, John Malin, doing Jawbreakers and Ironsight's absolutely fantastic comics, which reminds me I'm supposed to send those out to a listener. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next episode.